Welcome to the Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Keren Eldad. Settle in. We're about to make you feel really good. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Coach Podcast, the Coaching Masters season. This season is called Coaching Masters as it is a deep dive into integrity and excellence in teaching. We're exploring true mastery, not just what we teach or how we teach, but why we teach. Today, I'm deeply honored to welcome Dr. Kristin Neff. Kristin is a pioneering psychologist, an associate professor at UT Austin, and the author of Self-Compassion and Fierce Self-Compassion. She was the first to define and measure the concept of self-compassion in academic literature and has quietly revolutionized how we relate to ourselves in the process. But beyond the research, what I admire most about Kristin is that she walks her talk. Her work is rooted in real experience, grappling with childhood wounds, walking through divorce, navigating motherhood, and staying grounded in the messy middle of it all. She seems to take her own advice when she says true strength begins not with striving, but with softening. Welcome, Dr. Neff. What an honor.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
It's a real pleasure. A strong theme this season has been that our greatest teachings emerge from our biggest struggles. Byron Katie, who was here yesterday, talked of her greatest depression, her agoraphobia, her immense suffering and how it led to here. And many other teachers have talked about struggles varying from anorexia to divorce to having children go through things, their children go through things that have really shaped the way we see the world. I think one of the things that is so extraordinary about you is your childhood and your father. Can you begin your story there?
Yeah, and just to say, I study self-compassion. Passion means to suffer, calm is with. So it's all about how we are with suffering. So I think
wow.
you're really wise to point out that how we are with our suffering, the hardest bits, is really what helps us grow. So I was a child of, you might say, the hippie movement. My mother and father were children of the 50s, and they got married, and my mother signed up for she was homecoming queen. She signed up for the man who will take care of her, and she didn't work, and she had 2 kids. But my father discovered the hippie movement, basically dropped out and abandoned my mother and my brother and me when we were very little. I was 2.5. So I think that shaped my early childhood, feeling that abandonment. And then so he actually took my brother for a while. He said, I'm not going to pay you child support, but I will take one of the kids to kind of, help you with your costs, which was a bad idea. The hippie movement wasn't safe for a young child. So I lost my father, and then I lost my brother.
Yeah.
Luckily, my mother was very strong. She found a job, she supported us, was able to get my brother back, and we got through it. But yeah, it does shape you. Certainly, you might say I've been a little more successful in the academic department of my life, the professional department of my life, than my love life. So these things, they've got tentacles.
Well, that's one of the things I love that you talk about so openly, because it's so relatable. We are so discombobulating in our early dating experiences, and we can't really trace back what exactly is wrong. But you have a very unusual situation there, and you're kind of discovering it in real time, right?
Yeah, well, so I really like the idea of we have different parts of ourselves. Therapies like internal family systems talk about it, but part psychology is a very old way of thinking about the psyche.
Yeah.
And again, I have parts of myself which are very strong, you might say very together, very wise. And I also have younger parts of myself that were formed, when I was younger, formed with the expectation that, a man's not going to be there for you, you can't rely on him, you kind of got to take any breadcrumbs that are thrown your way. So I've done a lot of work with them. And what's really interesting, I find, is I've learned, and this is through my self-compassion practice, that these parts are continually trying to get their needs met from the outside, like recreating the past. Maybe if I have that perfect husband or relationship, I can heal those wounds. What I've really learned is healing comes from the inside. I'm the one who keeps me safe, who helps me feel like I'm worthy, I'm cared for, I'm loved. And I've really come to see myself as my primary form of security. So, and that's a gift. You know,
It's also the
I
work.
might not have known that. If I had the perfect man, then I would still think he was the source of my happiness and security. And then what happens if he goes?
Exactly.
You know, and now the inner strength and security comes from
Well,
inside.
the best part of what you just said is that technically you never would have met the perfect man, because without self-compassion, there is no strong relationship. Self-compassion is the core of absolutely everything, as you say. Now, you start coming by your focal point in your work, honestly, and that brings me to a book that you mentioned in the first book, Self-Compassion. You referenced Sharon Salzberg's Loving Kindness as a major influence. What did that book do for you?
Yeah, so, you know, when I was in graduate school in the 90s, I learned mindfulness to help me deal with some stress. I talk about that in my book.
The doctorate, yes.
Yeah, my first marriage fell apart, and I was having stress about my doctorate, so I turned to mindfulness to help me deal with my stress. And mindfulness was somewhat helpful, you know, having space around it so you weren't so identified with your thoughts and emotions. But it wasn't until I brought the warmth in, that it really made the difference. And that's where Sharon Salzberg was a real pioneer in terms of writing the book Loving Kindness so many years ago. I say she was the first one in that field of kind of, you might say, people who brought Buddhism to psychology. There were people like Jon Kabat-Zinn, Jack Kornfield, and also Sharon Salzberg, who really brought in the heart. And I saw that it was the heart, opening my heart to myself, that really gave me the strength I was looking for. And that's because warmth gives you safety.
And that's what you mean, heart warmth.
Heart warmth. Yeah, there's space. Mindfulness says, okay, you know, I'm more than just these thoughts. I'm not so wrapped up in them. It's very important. It gives you a sense of balance and equanimity. But heart is like, oh, I'm so sorry, this is hard. You know, just even the quality of the voice, that feeling of tenderness, that feeling of care. You know, we are mammals, and we evolved to interpret care as a signal of safety. So space is helpful, but it's not enough. We need space and warmth for us to feel not only safe, but also strong.
I want everybody to watch your TED Talk, because you do talk about the fact that we are mammals.
Yeah.
And just how critical this is. Such an important point, and delivered so beautifully, because we are born, as you say, basically invalids. Just completely infantile. And we cannot survive without this.
Yes, we need our parents or caregivers to take care of us, to care about us in order for us to survive. So that feeling of being cared for is really key to our sense of safety and our optimal functioning. And it's interesting, often when people are just working so hard to get things right and achieve, and if you forget the warmth, it's like you'll never feel as secure to take risks, or you'll never feel at ease in your body, which means you aren't going to perform as well.
Or you'll become the opposite, very crazy.
Or
unusual with risk. No, I think all the time about examples like extreme examples like Elon Musk.
Yes.
Where if you don't feel any care, you become nihilistic.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And the care has to start at home. You know, it helps to have other people to care for you, but sometimes people can't even let in the care. It's like their hearts are so closed.
Of course, because their parents didn't love them.
Yes, yeah. But I have to say, you know, I'm a parent, and we don't want to put all the blame on the parents.
No, of course not.
So, for instance, this may be surprise you. My son is very self-critical. He grew up with the mother of self-compassion. It's because he's autistic. All our brains work this way, but I think especially some, you know, neurodiverse people. What we do in the face of fear, even though, you know, we evolved see care as a signal of warmth, what we do is, as individual creatures in the face of fear, is we go into fight, flight, or freeze. So we fight ourselves. We kind of like beat ourselves up, thinking somehow we'll have control over ourselves.
Of course, yes.
Or we flee into a sense of shame or isolation, or we freeze and we get stuck. So I could see it in my son so clearly. Again, I'm pretty sure that one wasn't my fault, but he would get really scared. He said, it still happens. And like his reptilian brain, remember, that's older than the mammalian brain. The first thing that comes online is I got to fight the problem. You know, even it breaks my heart, you know, sometimes even like hit himself, because he's just scared and he's trying to find safety with the reptilian brain again, which is also part of our evolution.
Yes.
And so luckily, you know, I can help him. The way I help him the most is I become compassionate presence.
Yes.
and he feels my presence, and that helps him regulate himself. But again, just to say, it's not just the parents, it's also partly our wiring and our larger society.
In this case, however, having read Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk, I have tremendous compassion for him because his parents certainly did not love him.
Yeah.
However,
it makes it a lot
you're
worse,
absolutely
for sure.
right, and that is also the coaching stance. The coaching stance is that you really are what you are in the present moment.
Yes.
And the best thing that we can do for you is basically exemplify compassion. And compassion is not pity.
No.
And it's not aggressive love or anything like that. It's
not
literally
weakness.
just, we love you and we see you and you're good.
And it's support.
Yeah.
I mean, the best parent is like a really supportive parent.
Yes.
Sometimes I like to call it mama bear self-compassion.
That's right.
Like, talk about this protective, really strong, powerful force. If you have that mama bear energy for yourself, that means you're going to draw boundaries. That means you're going to push yourself to reach your full potential, not because you're inadequate if you don't, but just because you love yourself and you want to reach your full potential in life. So it's
incredible.
Yeah.
And so from loving kindness, the focal point essentially of your study becomes loving kindness.
Yes, yeah.
Which other teachers inform you along the way? At what point do you really start to zoom in on this?
Well, so, I first had the experience of self-compassion and saw how it helped me get through a really stressful time in my life. And then when I got the job at UT Austin, I decided I wanted to measure it. And I had to think, well, what goes into self-compassion? And from my point of view, it's really the same experience as compassion for others. It's a lot more natural. Again, partly because the way it evolved, it's more natural to care for others, and because of the threat response to criticize ourselves. That's just the way the brain and our biology evolved. So what goes into compassion? Well, there's warmth and care. Mindfulness also needs to be part of compassion for self or others. Mindfulness is the awareness. If I'm not aware that I'm struggling, if I'm not aware that you're struggling, I can't give you compassion. I can't give myself compassion. And here's the thing, when things are scary, especially with self-compassion, the last thing in the world I want to do is acknowledge it. I want to run for the hills, or I want to blame, or I want to get rid of it right away. So I need the space to be able to say, this is really challenging. I'm stressed. I'm having a hard time here, with a little space around it. That's mindfulness.
Yeah.
And then we need the warmth. But here's the thing, I didn't realize this at first, but thinking about it, I was kind of obsessed with this question. Well, what is the difference between compassion and pity, or between self-compassion and self-pity? And I realized it was a sense of connectedness to others. If I said, Keren, I pity you, you're not going to like that, because that means I'm looking down on you. But if I say,
you're separating yourself
but if
from
I say,
me.
hey, Keren, I've been there, I totally understand.
Exactly.
Then we feel
Boom.
connected. And the same with self-pity is, well, it's me.
Yes.
Somehow it's like, I'm the only one who's suffering. And self-compassion means, hey, this is human.
That's exactly
It's normal.
right.
And so so my scale to
Yes.
measure it, I measure these three elements: mindfulness, kindness, and a sense of common humanity or connectedness. And that's key. And what's interesting is not only does it go into the measurement, if you want to give yourself compassion, it's like the three ingredients. Be mindful of the fact that you're having a hard time. Say some kind, supportive words to yourself, and remember you aren't alone. What you're going through is human. And when you put those three together, it makes you incredibly strong and resilient, the research shows.
We're going to go a little deeper into those three compartments, because I have taught based on your work. By the way, Brene Brown quotes you all the time, too.
Yeah.
So we're all using your work in order to help identify this. But I also want to give us kudos, because we had a little interaction just before this podcast, and you described a situation, and I immediately said, I've been there.
Yes.
I know what this is like.
Exactly.
And that is such an interesting thing, because I remember back in the past when I was very separate from other people, very much in my ego identity, truly had to appear to be a certain way all the time. When I heard people's stories of any struggle they were going through, I would immediately go, oh, that's too bad for them. Which was such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Such an interesting thing. And that is separation from others.
Yeah, and also separation from yourself.
Of course.
Because part of us, again, this is just a part,
Yes.
wants us to believe that we're in control.
Yeah.
Wants us to believe that we can stop bad things from happening.
Yeah.
As opposed to the truth, which is we can't stop bad things from happening, but we can help it. So we can help ourselves so that we aren't so knocked over by them,
Yeah.
and we can get through them. And the key that we can actually learn and grow from them.
I learned this. I was volunteer on the suicide hotline for many years.
Oh, wow.
That brought me this work, and I never felt pity for anybody because I always thought, what a superstar for calling and asking for help.
Yes.
Yesterday I was super validated because in speaking to Byron Katie, I said, do you ever pity anybody? Because you hear horrible stories.
Yeah, yeah.
And she just went, no.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's turn to your research. For those who are new to your work, what is self-compassion? What are the 3 core components everyone should understand? Now, you describe them in a way that is slightly modified. I would love to talk about the 3 exact compartments
and their
in
opposites.
self-compassion. Exactly, and their opposites.
Right,
because
right.
it's so important to help the distinguishing factors.
Yes. Okay. So, again, mindfulness, you might say, is the first temporal step of self-compassion, the willingness to acknowledge that suffering is present, right? So, and
recognition
the
of your
recognition,
humanity, you say.
Yeah. Well, that's actually the 3rd component. So we're still with mindfulness. So
Sorry.
the opposite of mindfulness is interesting, is over-identification. So here's what happens. Over-identification is when you are like blended with or lost in your suffering. So often, when suffering occurs, it's like we become fused with it. All we can see is how bad I am or how bad my situation is. There's no space around it. So mindfulness is we get that little bit of space so that we can have a balanced stance. Again, so we aren't ignoring it, but we aren't lost in it, because that's how we get messed up. We aren't mindful, we get over-identified, we get carried away with the storyline, and there's no place to give compassion from. We're just lost in the drama. So first step, mindfulness versus over-identification. And then kindness versus harsh self-judgment.
Yes,
and remember,
that's my favorite one.
Yes, and by the way, harsh self-judgment, not like you can have constructive criticism.
Of course.
Being kind to yourself does not mean like, oh, there's no problem here. That what I said with no problem. No, because that's not kind. Kind means giving clear, honest, constructive feedback about what behaviors or situations are helpful or harmful.
Yes.
It's not coddling. That's not kind.
Yes.
Coddling is not kind.
Coddling is not kind. If Professor Jonathan Haidt has taught us anything,
yes.
coddling is not kind.
Yes, that's right. And so again, so what is kindness? Kindness comes in various forms. Sometimes it's really just clear feedback. Hey, that's not working. It's like mama bear. Sometimes it is like more tender. Sometimes it's more kind of soft and I'm so sorry you're going through this. Sometimes it's really encouraging. I'm here for you. I can I believe in you. But what it always is, it's always asking, what do I need right now? Right. And so what we need is going to depend on our situation. Sometimes we need to kick ourselves in the butt if we aren't getting things done. Sometimes we need just to rest and relax if we're over striving. So sometimes we need to go left, sometimes we need to go right. But it's the desire to help. That's the care, this desire to help, to ask ourselves, what do I need to be well? What do I need to be safe? What do I need to reach my full potential? Being willing to ask that question and then doing something about it. So that's the kindness. And then the third is, as I mentioned, a sense of common humanity versus isolation. And again, it's not a logical thing, but if you start paying attention, you'll start noticing that when you make a mistake, it feels as if everyone else in the world is living a normal, perfect life, and it's like something really abnormal or unusual to make a mistake or to get things wrong. Or it feels like everyone else is living a healthy, unproblematic life, and it's just me who's got this.
And if you look on Instagram, you're convinced that they're all on yachts in Greece as we speak.
And again, if you were to ask anyone, is that true? You would say, no, I know that's not true. But emotionally, that's how we tend to react. And so reminding yourself that it's not true is so key. Reminding yourself that struggle, failure, mistakes, challenge, this is precisely what makes us human. This is what connects us to others, not what separates us.
I want to debunk, therefore, the myth of self-confidence. You also speak about this, self-esteem, self-confidence, the idea of confidence as the exact opposite of self-compassion, because this was a very critical understanding for me. I couldn't really understand how to build self-compassion until I dismantled the clutches of confidence that I was so addicted to for so many years.
Well, it's interesting. So actually, confidence is a little bit different than self-esteem. It kind of depends how you're using the word.
Well, again, it's the nomenclature, and it's fuzzy. Jean Twenge really kind of discredited
So competence Okay, so actually self-compassion, when you know you've got your own back, gives you a sense of competence or
Yes.
confidence in the sense that even if I make a mistake, I can come back from it.
Yes.
You know, as
Respect,
Brene Brown
yes.
says, even if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean I am a mistake, so I can work through it. But self-esteem, or the self-confidence that comes from getting things right or succeeding or having other people praise you,
Achieving, yes.
that the achievement-based self-esteem, which most self-esteem is, that's actually not healthy.
Yeah.
In fact, before getting my job at UT Austin, I did 2 years of postdoctoral study with one of the country's leading self-esteem researchers, a woman named Susan Harder. And it was, my first paper was actually titled Self-Compassion, a healthier alternative to self-esteem.
Wow.
Because self-esteem, there's nothing wrong with liking yourself, but why do you like yourself?
Yes.
Typically, it's for 3 reasons, either because we achieve in those areas of life that are important to us, because we look the way we want to look, or because people like us and we're popular. All of those are contingent, right? Because sometimes we achieve, sometimes we fail.
That's right.
That's how we learn. Sometimes people like us, sometimes they don't. You know, sometimes we look the way we do, but, you know, as you get older, you find, you know, that's not working so well for you either. So it's all contingent, meaning it's unstable. So there is a sense of self-worth, the compassion, but it's not comparative. I don't have to be special and above average to have self-compassion. I just have to be a flawed human being worthy of respect like every other single human being on the planet. And so what we know in the research is it provides a much more stable sense of, again, self-confidence, self-worth, but it comes from the inside, not from the outside. And that's the huge difference.
Well, you're reminding me that I said to one client, self-esteem, think of it as crypto.
Yeah.
You can't rely on it. And
Right.
self-compassion, you can take to the bank forever. Really, really reliable currency.
I also like to say self-esteem is a fair weather friend. Self-compassion is a true and stable, reliable
friend. Exactly. I always say the second your bank account doesn't please you, or your scale doesn't please you, or you don't have enough likes, self-esteem goes right out the door. It's worth nothing.
And then, so for instance, we do research with athletes. It's actually starting to take hold in the athletic world. So if you're a player and your self-esteem is invested in winning and like performing at your best, then you've seen it happen in games. Like if a player like misses a shot and then they think, oh, you know, what does that say about me? Then they get off their game and then down they go. You know, and then they really lose. Yeah. But a player who says, oh, well, so I missed the shot, no big deal. You know, it doesn't say anything about me. They keep going, they keep in that sense of flow, and then they're actually able to learn from, well, why did I miss the shot? Maybe I need to work on this skill or that skill.
It's a magnificent thing. It should be in an episode of a new season of Ted Lasso.
It should.
What are some common misconceptions around self-compassion?
Well, it's so sad because they really stand in the way of many people getting be more self-compassionate. They're common. One is that it's weak, because they only think of self-compassion in its kind of gentle form. They don't think of like fierce mama bear self-compassion. So what we know from the research is, without a doubt, I could say thousands of studies show self-compassion will make you stronger, and it's one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience we have available. So when the shit hits the fan, can I say that on your podcast?
Course, yes.
Okay.
We have only adults listening.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so when things get really tough, you need to have your own back. If things get tough and you kneecap yourself by shaming yourself or criticizing yourself, you're going to make yourself weaker. If you're an enemy to yourself, you're going to weaken yourself. If you're an ally, if you say, I support you, it's okay to make mistakes, I'm here for you, how can I help you? That's going to make you stronger. So whether it's dealing with like combat or hurricanes or COVID, earthquakes, you name it, we've looked at it in the research. People who have more self-compassion survive with more strength and resilience.
Equanimity, yes.
Equanimity, but also it's
their bounce back rate is so much faster.
Yes, because when you got your own back,
you
know, imagine if you had a friend and you said, you're a piece of crap, I can't believe you messed up like that. Is that really going to help them be strong? No, your friend's like, I'm here for you, what do you need? I got you. That's going to make your friend stronger. Right. Same thing with herself. So that's a big one. Another one is that it's selfish.
Yes,
you know,
that it's navel-gazing.
Navel-gazing, that it's self-focused. Okay, so some people, like Dan Siegel, hates the fact that I called it self-compassion. He wishes I would have called it inner compassion. the same thing. I know, I disagree, it would be less catchy. But nonetheless, the reason is because there's not a lot of self and self-compassion.
No.
So what happens when we're suffering and we criticize ourselves? We're very self-focused. We identify with it. I'm crap, my life's horrible. But with self-compassion, we're actually moving away from the sense of self, separate, and suffering toward the field of compassion, which is caring and connected. So there's actually no self in self-compassion because we're taking the stance of a compassionate other toward ourselves. And so what that does is we know, for instance, caregivers who don't have self-compassion, who just focus on the other people and then they get knocked over with their own stress and burden, they burn out.
They burn out and they become quite ill.
Ill. But if compassion flows inward as well as outward, and there's not a lot of self-focus going on, it actually allows you to keep giving without being burnt out.
It's completely true. That's the first thing I learned also as a suicide counselor. One of the parts of the over-identification is the ego.
Yes.
It's looking for validation through the suffering of others rather than truly being full and expanded and relaxed and ready to just help you out.
Yes, absolutely. I could see that. I could see both of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a totally different ballgame. It's such a very, very important thing to understand about the distinction between self-compassion and navel-gazing, as they truly are unrelated.
Yes, it actually allows the care to flow through you, but it has to flow in and out.
Exactly.
So otherwise, if it's a one-way door, then that creates a sense of separation.
And compassion is truly boundaried, which also allows you to have completely different levels of relationship as well. Because you finally do truly respect yourself.
Yes, because when you have compassion, you do draw boundaries. You don't prioritize yourself over others, but you take your needs seriously, which means, I'm sorry, I would love to help you, but I just can't right now. And that's what allows you to be able to continue to help in the future. But let me say the biggest, it's interesting, we've done research on this all over the world. Number one reason people aren't self-compassionate is because they think it will undermine their motivation.
Of course, they think this is a huge misconception. I'd love you to talk about it.
Yes.
By the way, every time I talk, for example, about Gilded and the myth of success, the automatic assumption is that I'm telling you to just chill and not do anything.
That's
There's
right.
such binary thinking.
Yeah. Well, and it's because self-criticism kind of works. There are many people who've gotten through law school or achieved great things through the whip, like really being harsh with themselves. It kind of works because it gets you to pay attention, and it scares you. It's like, wow, I better do this, otherwise I'm going to hate myself or I'm going to be worthless. So it kind of works, but it works the exact same way it kind of works with our kids or our young people. Yeah, if you tell your kid, you better study, you're grounded forever and I'm going to hate you, they will pay attention, they may study more. Some parents in the past, that used to be the parenting style. It does kind of work, we aren't going to deny that. But we know as parents, what happens if we tell your kid, I'm going to hate you if you don't get an A, or you better study or else. They're going to be nervous. They aren't going to perform at their full potential because of so much performance anxiety. And then what happens if they do fail? They're probably just going to give up. So
It's combustible and finite.
Yes, it works in the short term,
Yes.
but in the long term it undermines you. It's the exact same thing with ourselves. So if you care, just like if you care about your kid, you aren't going to say, oh, don't worry, don't go to school, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. No, if you love your kid, you're going to say, I want you to reach your full potential. How can I help? Do you need tutors? What can we, you try to figure out how to help your child reach their goals. The same thing with self-compassion. And so there's so much research on it. So I mentioned that we're working with athletes, for instance. We trained NCAA athletes. These are top-level people for whom second best isn't good enough.
Yeah.
These young people, they have their scholarships riding on it. They want to go into the pros. So we taught these teams of NCAA athletes how to be a good supportive coach to yourself. Again, those coaches that just cuss you out, they kind of work, but they aren't as good as the ones that are firm. They tell you what you need to know, but it's because they care about you.
They care about you, exactly.
And so we had them, by the way, we didn't call it self-compassion. We called it inner strength training. There's nothing special about the word. If it doesn't help, you don't need to use it. But we taught them.
I'm all about the euphemisms for organizations, believe me.
Yeah, so we taught them how to be good, supportive coaches to themselves, to support themselves, to give them clear feedback, which for an athlete is the kindest thing you can do.
You'll be a coach to yourself.
Yes.
You're tricking them into being
a good
the
coach.
right person to
a
themselves.
good coach
Yeah.
gives you feedback, but has your back, and a good coach cares about
Clever.
you. And what lo and behold, not only did it increase their self-compassion and their mental health, it improved their performance. We got ratings, both self-rated performance evaluations. Also, the coach agreed, yeah, your performance has gone up. Because again, if you want to be in the zone, if you want to be in that flow state, and we know whether it's business or whether it's athletics or music, when you are just in the zone, when you're doing what you've been trained to do, when everything's working well, you aren't thinking about yourself. And when you're criticizing yourself or shaming yourself, you are lost in self-focus.
Of course.
So
horrible
lots of
place.
research supports this. It's not, you don't have to take my word for it. You can read the studies.
I don't need to take your word for it, because in fact I believe this has also been something that you have demonstrated to yourself in your own life. Speaking of fierce mama bear energy,
Yes.
didn't you learn an enormous amount about the value of self-compassion in mothering your child?
Yes, no, absolutely. My son is like my muse. So he's, he has some challenges. He's autistic, and I found out in adolescence he also has OCD, which in some ways is almost harder, has been more challenging to deal with than
Yes,
the
because
autism.
it's very painful. They take it out on themselves so much.
Yes, and just the obsessive loops.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So, for instance, some parents, when they have an autistic child, I respect them, but just like give up their whole life, give up their careers to meet their child's needs. I actually didn't do that. I mean, I met his needs, but I got help. I actually kept my career going because I knew that if I just gave myself away for my son, then who's going to be left? Like, but there could be a shell of a mother left to really be there for him. And so I kept my career going, and I made sure he got the help he needed. And like I kind of parented him by example, by letting the compassion flow inward as well as outward. I remember, for instance, when he had these terrible tantrums when he was younger, and then when he was an adolescent, he didn't tantrum, but he had these OCD loops.
Yeah.
The way I dealt with it was I gave myself compassion.
Yes.
So instead of, because I couldn't really reach him, because his brain was just going haywire in terms of its firing, so I would give myself compassion. I would even put my hands on my heart. I would focus on myself. I would help myself be strong and steady. And then through example and through osmosis and through mirror neurons, in the process of empathy where we impact each other's mind states, by being strong in his presence, I helped give him strength. So it's...
and I think that particular chapter of your book of self-compassion is mandatory reading for any parent, let alone parent with special needs children, because it's remarkable how many of you I meet in my practice who do not love themselves through this process.
Yes.
Who just fully
they think it's all about
everything we need to do now is channel the energy towards the child.
And you forget about yourself. By the way, I did do some stuff, like we went to Mongolia and got him healings. We did a lot of
It was incredible too.
Yeah, so I it's not like I didn't do anything. I did a lot for my son. I still do a lot for my son. I mean, I adore my son. But I never forgot myself.
Yeah.
Including drawing some boundaries when I needed to. Like, no, I need to focus on myself. So, for instance, I continued to go on regular meditation retreats because I knew I needed
and
that.
That's how it ends up working.
Yeah.
That really is. I've seen so many examples of the opposite when you've completely gotten lost in the child, where unfortunately it just does not end well.
Yeah.
I really, really, really recommend this work. What's lighting you up right now? What are you working on next?
Well, so my latest book actually, which is, what I'm focusing is on burnout, mindful self-compassion for burnout. And this came out of what happened with the pandemic. I mean, like so many people, the pandemic was scary. And then, of course, my son, who was going to high school, had to be schooled at home. So I was trying to get my work done and helping him. And it's, more challenging with special needs kids, the Zoom schooling. And I teetered on the edge of burnout. I didn't actually burn out. And I knew it was because of my self-compassion practice that I didn't. Because, again, I still kept meeting my own needs, that I took the time and the energy to ask myself, well, what do I need in the moment? And kind of emotionally, I nurtured myself. So burnout, especially coming out of the pandemic, hopefully it's getting a little better, but it's so ubiquitous, whether it's parents of special needs kids, whether it's any sort of parent, whether it's professional caregivers, whether it's business people, the rates of burnout are absolutely off the charts.
Off the charts.
And
it's the scourge of our times.
And in the corporate world as well. I mean, it's just work stress, work burnout, and go, and this is your realm. Just achieve. And people just forget about themselves in the process. They forget to ask themselves, so what do I need in the moment? And I really do think that self-compassion it's really the antidote to burnout. Do you know the 3 components of burnout is defined by Maslow's inventory?
No.
You might. Okay. So Christina Maslow, she's
I
the one.
didn't know that
Yeah,
Maslow had anything to do with
no,
this.
no, Maslow, Christina Maslow.
I was like, Maslow?
So the 3.
Abraham?
No. The 3 core components of burnout, which may be interesting to people. One is exhaustion. That's really obvious. But there are 2 others. One is the sense of incompetence, because what happens is you start achieving less, and especially if you're a high
Start
achiever,
turning on yourself,
you blame
yes.
yourself for achieving less, and then you feel incompetent. And then the third one is something called depersonalization, which basically means you stop caring. This is the way we try to like deal with all the stress we're under. If I don't care about my job, or if I don't care about the people I'm working for, maybe you're a healthcare provider, then I'm not going to face that stress. Again, this is the body's natural way of
So
kind of shutting
interesting,
down.
yes.
And so these 3 things, self-compassion addresses directly. We're less exhausted if we remember to meet our own needs, remember to draw boundaries. If we don't beat ourselves up, we don't feel so incompetent. We realize, hey, it's really stressful. I'm doing the best I can. And we don't have to shut down our hearts and stop caring. If we keep our hearts open to ourselves, that means we keep our hearts open to other people. And so that's why self-compassion, I think, has a unique role to play into countering burnout. So, and I'm interested in other things as well, but that's my
I truly
latest
love
book.
this conversation. I've learned so much. I'm going to link all of your resources below, and also this unpacking, because I think it is so fundamental. But above all, you've demonstrated for me that we really come to teach the thing that we need most to learn.
It's true.
And that's what really, really great teachers are. They're an embodiment of the lesson they came here to learn themselves.
Yeah, I always thank goodness I'm not a mindfulness teacher, because I lose it all the time. But I'm a compassion teacher, which means I can forgive myself for my mistakes. It's much easier. That's the box I can always check.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that you chose this, Malia. I can't thank you enough. Your work has informed my work enormously. And I think I see it as a quiet revolution. The ability to change not through big pressure, not through massive moves, but through a true inner shift that, again, is the stablest of all currencies. May your life be blessed with these. What a real pleasure to have you today. To
Thanks,
you, dear
Karen.
listener, if this episode has resonated with you, please review us and please subscribe so that we can bring you more of this. I hope that today's session resonated with you and has called you to go on an inner journey to connect more deeply with yourself, because it's the only thing that will really set you free. Until next time.